Welcome to our Tuesday discussion today with Dr. Christa Hasenkopf. Hasenkopf.
I know. Very American.
Her grandfather comes from this area, and in America people don't know that it means the head of a rabbit. But the great-great-grandfather who moved out in 1917 had that name, and now she's back in Munich since the beginning of this year. Sometimes people ask me, how do you find all these people who are in our Tuesday discussions? And I have a long list, but the list is getting longer and longer. Usually what happens is somebody is writing an email and they say, I'm in town, and if they're really interesting, we decide to invite them. And in this case, Christa approached me. I just checked in March this year and said, I'm in town. And I thought, this is great what she's doing. She's a real she's an academic, but also an environmental practitioner. She comes from EPIC, the Energy Policy Institute of the University of Chicago, EPIC, EPIC, great name. And she's the director of air quality programs. Originally, Christa is from Pennsylvania, from no man's land and no woman's land, from somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and from there she moved to a university which is also in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania, not College Station, but State College in Pennsylvania. And then I don't know how it happened, but my understanding is you were all of a sudden interested in astrophysics, which probably, I don't know, was anybody in your village interested in astrophysics before you?
Probably.
And she got interested in one of the moons of Saturn. And there is a connection to air pollution. The moon was called Titan. I all learned this 5 minutes ago, but it's fascinating. So Titan is a moon that has a lot of haze around it, and the haze, apparently, which could be captured and brought to Earth, is exactly the same as the air pollution outside there. So if you produce pollution with a car, it's the same thing you would find in this moon. And so at one point, and I find this story so interesting, Dr. Hasenkopf, who studied in Boulder, met a colleague from a neighboring university who said, I'm just coming back from Ulaanbaatar, and I thought this was so weird that it's so hazy there. And he showed her the pictures and he said, this is exactly like Saturn, this is exactly like Titan, it's all the same. And so she got interested, went there for a couple of years with a Fulbright, and then extended, I don't know how many years were you there?
2
years.
Mm-hmm.
And she set up monitoring stations. In a way, it was quite clear where the smoke had come from Soviet Union era coal power stations, but also from these ovens in the yurts, where people burn everything from wood to coal to, I don't know, plastic, and also what?
Rubber boots.
Yeah. So this is where really the connection comes from. The astrophysicist who gets excited about air pollution and figures out what a major problem it is. And I could continue to talk about this, but I will stop here. The only thing I will mention, because that's kind of fun, you lived in Annapolis until recently, but before you lived in a house, you actually lived on a sailboat for quite some time. So you're an expert on the world up there and on the sea and on land, and I can't wait to hear from you about shining a light on golden opportunities to close air pollution data gaps. It's a long title, very scientific. You are a scientist. Anyways, join me in welcoming Dr. Hasenkopf.
Thank you very much. It is awesome to be here with you all, and a real honor, and also just really lovely. As Christoph mentioned, I moved here in January of this year, so it's wonderful to connect with other environmentally minded folks here as well. So as you mentioned, I'm from the University of Chicago, and today I'll be presenting some of our most recent work where we're exploring a new topic, which is air quality data gaps. What does that mean? Why is it important? And hopefully interest you as well. I work with a team who are also from around the world, from India, Canada, also someone actually from Chicago, on the work you'll be seeing here today. And so just to level set, air pollution, outdoor air pollution, is estimated to cause 1 out of every 8 deaths on the planet. This is from the WHO. And you'll see varying estimates from one entity to another, but ballpark, 1 out of every 8 deaths. The World Bank estimates that it costs the world 5 to 6% in its GDP, or $8 trillion plus per year. But it's largely a silent killer. It doesn't necessarily make the same headlines for its health impact as other issues. In particular, the type of air pollution that causes the most health harm and is most pervasive across countries is something called PM 2.5, or fine particulate matter. It looks like this. You can often see it if there's enough of it. You can taste it if there's enough of it. And even when it's at levels where you don't quite see it at this level, it can still cause health harm. And it can come from a variety of sources, basically anything that generates smoke. Even fine dust can cause it too. So this could be vehicle emissions, this could be household burning, this could be industrial sources, or things like wildfires as well. And of course, smoking can cause it too. So just to give a sense of the size of particles, and this is really the issue with PM 2.5 and where it gets its name from. Here's a scale. And it's basically particles that are 2.5 microns in diameter. And this is a red blood cell for comparison in size, or the coronavirus, which is right here, for comparison in size. And it's the size of the particle that causes what we think causes the most harm. It's small enough to get past your natural defenses, so you don't sneeze when you breathe it in, it doesn't get stuck to your throat, it goes deep into your respiratory system, and it can get into your bloodstream. And that's really where the havoc is caused, because it can get to any part of the body, and a wide body of research has been shown that it can cause harm in a variety of different body parts, perhaps most impactfully in terms of mortality, to your heart. So it can cause cardiovascular issues like heart attacks, or exacerbate issues that you might already have with your cardiovascular system. Things like COPD, of course issues like lung cancer or respiratory issues, and diabetes as well. And so that's the underlying reason where that 1 out of 8 deaths come from across the world. So how does PM 2.5 pollution compare to other health threats across the world? So this shows number of life years lost from average human life expectancy on the planet. This comes from research we've done at EPIC recently. And it compares PM 2.5, shown here, to, say, smoking, child and maternal malnutrition, alcohol use, all the way down from HIV/AIDS and all other sexually transmitted infections and neglected tropical diseases plus malaria. And you can see that the PM 2.5 really is quite the outlier, and it's the largest environmental health threat on the planet. Meanwhile, and this is an important point for what we'll focus on here, is important issues like malaria and HIV/AIDS and tuberculosis. There's a global fund for them to the tune of about $4 billion per year. There's no fund like that for PM 2.5. In fact, I was sharing with Christoph before this, from philanthropic foundations, there's a total of $64 million per year devoted towards outdoor air pollution, according to the Clean Air Fund. I find that just staggering and extremely shocking, and also something where you could actually make an impact with a relatively small amount of money on a global issue, which isn't often the case with most health issues. So to put this in another way, so there's a profound mismatch with where air pollution is and where we're putting resources to address it. So this figure shows the air pollution health burden. So Asia and Africa are this red bar. Europe, US, and Canada is this small blue bar. And then this dark red portion is Asia and Africa, not including India and China, which I'll share why we're looking at that section in a moment. So then this is the burden. If you then look at the resource where we deploy resources, it's exactly inverted. So in terms of where there's available air quality data produced by governments, this baseline level you need in order to build policy around air pollution, you see this picture. So Asia and Africa are here. The majority of countries do not have that, what we were calling fully open air quality data produced by their governments. whereas Europe, US, and Canada, you can see the majority do. This one on the right shows the regional share of all philanthropic funding for the world for outdoor air quality in 2021. And here you see Asia and Africa, and Europe, US, and Canada. Again, exactly inverted from where the issue actually is. And then if you look at Asia and Africa, excluding India and China, it's this small little red button spot right there. And that is $1.7 million a year. Africa alone receives less than $300,000 a year philanthropically to address the issue. So you can see there's a truly profound mismatch between where the problem is and where the resources are that we're deploying it, whether it's governments, the international community, or the philanthropic community. Meanwhile, where are the data gaps, the air quality data gaps? Again, that base infrastructure you need for any place to really start addressing and their problem, building policy, implementing policy. And you get a map like this. So you can see in the dark brown, there's the countries with no government air quality monitoring. And you can see that's largely a good chunk of Africa, some of Asia. And then you can see ones where there's some availability, but not perfectly open data. And then you can see countries where there is. And again, you can see Africa is highlighted here as where those gaps are. And again, this is also where there's only $300,000 less than that spent per year from global philanthropies. And I like looking at the cost of a home in a given place for comparison. So if you could put the cost of a single average home in Munich, small home actually in Munich, which is roughly 1.4 million USD according to the internet, one could increase the air pollution funding to Africa alone by 460%. One single home. I think that's so shocking. And so the reason, just to put a little more color on why I'm emphasizing air quality data gaps, is we have examples across the world where truly a single monitoring effort has catalyzed a bunch of different policy or resources that have fallen, have sort of been a waterfall effect after that initial monitor has been put up. There's an example of that with a government grade monitor in Beijing, China, that the US Embassy put up. This was like 2008 where they initially did this, and it later caught traction when they shared the data on social media. It's from 2011 to 2014. There's an example from Accra, Ghana, where a researcher got a single low-cost monitor that attracted attention, and now this person has a network of 20-something plus monitors across Ghana and a government-grade monitor that they've deployed as well, so they've expanded their resources. And a similar story in Lahore, Pakistan, where a citizen scientist got a very low-cost monitor, put it up, and now has networks that eventually instigated in Pakistan a smog commission to be set up that helped the government set up to address the issue. So there really is, for the cost of a single monitor, whether it's a government grade one or a low-cost sensor, there's this outsized potential for impact that can happen. And so that's why we're really interested in where these data gaps are and how could one close them at the national level. So a question we've been asking at EPIC, and we're building this report that'll come out in a few weeks, is what would it take to close air pollution data gaps in so-called air pollution data gap countries? And where are the places where they're most primed for a national level impact if you were to fill them? It's a hard question. So what we decided to do first was to talk to local actors across the world who are well poised to fill these data gaps. They're often working with different groups but aren't in control of, say, their own research or ability to shape their own research to fill data gaps in their country in ways that would most likely impact policy. And so we set up this open registry. We blasted it out as far as we could get. We got 77 responses from the various countries here. And we asked them extensively all kinds of questions around what are the challenges they're facing, what are the opportunities they see. You can see some of them here in various places across the world. And importantly, we asked them a very simple question. What amount of annual resources would you need in order to really charge up your work so that you could fill data gaps sustainably, air quality data gaps sustainably, and in a way you think that would drive national level policy action? And this is what we got. So roughly, most of them said for 50 to 100 K per year USD, they think that this would be enough to charge up their efforts, which again, in the scale of things, to support something that would have a national level impact, or even a shot at a national level impact, that's not so much funding. And so then what we did, and you don't need to read this whole slide, I know it's a little busy, we decided to develop what we're calling an opportunity score that helps assess where the countries are that could have this potential for national level impact that we could share with, say, with the philanthropy world, so that we could draw attention to the problem and also give them concrete places where they could potentially invest. And so we looked at the problem in 3 different ways, and you can see that on the pie Venn diagram here. So how important is the issue at the country level? Are there high pollution levels in the first place? Is there a large population that's being affected or not? Does this type of pollution impact the top 10 causes of death in the country? We looked at neglectedness for air pollution. So were there not a lot of resources flowing into that country or not? That makes it more attractive in a sense to fund something in the first place in the country. Were there existing policy standards or not? If there's not, again, there's a potential big delta of change that could happen if you did fund it. And of course, how much monitoring existed in the first place. And then the last bucket we looked at was the tractability. Were there people locally who were interested and well poised to do the monitoring in the first place? Is there someone to fund in the first place? Because if there's not, that makes it harder. So we conducted that analysis, and we identified 78 high and medium high, what we're calling opportunity score countries. You can see here. Again, no surprise. A lot of this information, honestly, is not surprising, but it hasn't been captured in a way that could be acted upon, say, by the philanthropy world. And so this was the picture we got. And when you look at the high opportunity places, there's 800, this ends up being 46 countries. There's 838 million people living in those 46 countries that are breathing air pollution that's 4 times the World Health Organization guideline. And in all of those countries, those 46 countries, there's a total of 30 government air pollution monitors. And to give a sense of that, in Finland, which has 1/160th the population of that, they have more monitors than that. And for air that is honestly some of the most pristine in the world. I think it's one of the few countries that actually meets the WHO guideline. And so to answer this question of what would it take to make a substantial progress in closing air pollution data gaps for that national level impact, we do a really rough calculation. We say, okay, there's 78 countries, somewhere between 50 and 100K would be meaningfully impactful to these groups, these local actors, and that would end up being less than $6 million USD per year. And you could say just because you fund a given place, that does not mean there will be that impact. There's probably going to be some range of places that knock it out of the park, and you see this national level impact. There's going to be some where you might make some progress, and then there's going to be some that probably don't turn out. But here's the thing. If you look at the health impacts underlying it, you could take a small country, let's say Guatemala, for example, which has 17 million people, and you could reduce their air pollution levels a small bit, 10 to 15%, and the avoided health costs in a given year would more than cover the cost of such a program. So you would need one minor success where you can draw that line between making the data exist and that policy level action to make this program worthwhile, which is what we're sort of proposing with our report that'll be released soon. And so with that, I'm looking forward to the discussion. If you're interested in actually receiving the report, please just shoot me an email. And as I mentioned, I'm here in Munich, so if anyone's ever interested in engaging, would love to hear from you too. Thank you.